Federal government to replace the military with police and insurgency fund. EFCC urged to probe governors' wives over financial transactions in HIV/AIDS. On the foreign scene, Australia's bushfires push residents towards the sea. And in sport, Russia appeals against wider ban from major sporting competitions.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. War against insurgency in the country will soon be taken over by the Nigerian police, replacing the military that has fought the battle to this point. The federal government says this will become operational in various parts of the country by the first quarter of next year. The reasoning is that the police has the primary responsibility for providing internal security and will assume those duties fully in the new year. As a result, the military will withdraw from internal security operations throughout the country. This is one of the decisions made on Monday at the Security Council meeting with security chiefs and stakeholders chaired by President Muhammadu Buhari. The Security Council said before the police takes over, the military would conduct a threat assessment to determine the specific areas troop withdrawals would cover. Chief of Naval Staff Vice Admiral Ibok Etek Ibas gave those details to State House correspondents shortly after the meeting. He said this move will enable the military to focus on its primary duty of defending the nation against external aggression and respond adequately to emerging threats. President Muhammadu Buhari says there are good things coming to the southeast geographical region. He has reassured the zone that his administration was committed to developing the region and would bring the dividends of democracy to the Igbos. Minister of State for Mines and Steel Development, Uche Chukwu Oga, said this on Monday at the commissioning and handing over of the first phase of gully erosion control and rehabilitation of the Agozi Amweze Amaba Road project. The minister, who was representing the president, also rebuffed claims of southeast marginalization. He said the Buhari administration would never relegate the southeast in the scheme of things. The Nigerian U.S. Diaspora Professional Groups is in agreement with the United States decision to place Nigeria on the watch list of persecuting countries. It has hailed that U.S. decision in a letter to the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. The group said in the letter the facts have shown that persecution of Christians in Nigeria has qualified the country to be given the status of a country of particular concern. It also noted that the watch list stage is the last stop before the country would be fully designated as a country of particular concern. The group also said this action has advanced the process towards recognizing Nigeria as a major global epicenter of religious persecution in the 20 years the ranking mechanism was established by the Clinton administration. The professionals said rather than face the factual evidence presented in the designation, the Nigerian government has resorted to numerous attacks and doctrines against the United States. The group Writers Against AIDS is asking the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, to probe the financial activities of state agencies for the control of HIV/AIDS. These agencies are mostly headed by governors' wives. In a statement on Monday by the group's national coordinator, Wale Adedoyin, Writers Against AIDS said most of the funds that ought to have been used in taking care of people living with AIDS were diverted into unknown accounts for selfish purposes. Adedoyin said the chairmanship and membership of the Agency for the Control of HIV/AIDS in some states have now been politicized. The group recommends the Agency for the Control of AIDS should be headed by medical practitioners who are well-versed in the field and not the wives of elected state governors whom it claims have seen the position as their constitutional rights. There are many parts to electronic broadcasting, and many of those parts have developed to a certain point in Nigeria. There are still some ways to go, but an area of the electronic media that is still in its infancy is animation. A local animator has been working on boosting that sector for socio-political change. Reporter Deji Badmus has the story.
This 3D animation was the work that brought Olajide Babalola and his Black House Studios to limelight. Babalola and his team created the Santa Project to bring a culturally Nigerian perspective to the story of Santa Claus using animation. By using local characters and adapting his entire content to reflect local nuances, Babalola's animations have since become a hit. Trained as an architect, Babalola founded Black House Studios in 2009, a production company that specializes in 3D modeling and animation. He says he picked up animation as his storytelling medium because he desired to tell stories that both the old and young could relate with.
It's a very good medium, to impact the consciousness of viewers. So you can break down complex messages into simple procedures. You can use it to tell a story, you can use it to teach, you can use it to train, you can use it to document, you can use it as a historical tool. There are so many things: enlightenment, education. So it just depends on what is inside you, what message or what idea, what concept you are trying to relate.
Animation has a universal appeal because of its versatile storytelling tool. And because of its element of entertainment, it's easy to overlook the complexities of producing it. Babalola dispels the myths about animation, explaining that there's more to it than meets the eye.
The total production process starts from concept development. You have your concept development, your scripts, your story outline, whatever message you're trying to give. You do your storyboarding, then you start your character development. All these processes are things that on their own will take a whole studio or studios to do.
Nigeria's Nollywood film industry is the second largest in the world, but animation is still in its infancy in Nigeria. Babalola says poor funding and cultural acceptance are hindering the growth of the animation industry in the country.
The environment has not recognized the value. The value proposition of animation has not yet been properly established in Nigeria. So a lot of people just look at it as a joke. You say, "Are you animating?" And somebody says, "Oh." The value of animation is not yet properly established in Nigeria. I think one of the key challenges we are facing, but it's changing. It's evolving.
To fast track this evolution, Babalola's Black House Studios is training hundreds of people to tell stories through animation, including kids from as young as 9 years old. They have also produced over 50 animation videos, all with local Nigerian characters. The end game for him is using animation to spur social political change in Nigeria and other impactful causes.
Coming up, African stories.
The Al-Shabaab militant group has claimed responsibility for Saturday's drug bomb attack in Mogadishu, Somalia's capital. At least 80 persons were killed and 78 others wounded. Al-Shabaab spokesman Ali Muhammad Rage, also called Ali Dare, released a statement on the group's official radio station. He said the group was targeting a Turkish convoy and security forces at the city's busy X-Control junction. Dare says he regretted the loss of civilian lives, but said, quote, "Protecting religion comes before saving a life," end quote. For many years now, Tunisia has been mindful of events at its border with Libya. On some occasions, it has closed the borders to prevent the Libyan conflict from spilling over into Tunisia. Now it has developed forces to the border once again for the same reason. Reporter Adnan Chawochi has the story.
The Defense Ministry announced that the various armed forces units stationed along the borders between Tunisia and Libya are ready and vigilant to prevent any possible intrusion during the ongoing fighting in Libya. Libyan analysts assert that the situation is very dangerous.
The situation is alarming and explosive in Libya, but we still believe as Libyans that dialogue is possible. The escalation of the armed conflict will have negative repercussions on the whole region.
The parliament has approved the deployment of armed units and national guards on border regions with Libya However, many MPs maintain that Tunisia's position is still unclear following the visit of the Turkish president.
We reject any form of support to Turkey in its military intervention plan in Libya. The Turkish president came to Tunisia with his defense minister and the head of the intelligence agency. He came to convince the president to join the coalition. The solution in Libya must be by Libyans.
We cannot remain neutral while Libyans are struggling with fate. Our role is to encourage peace initiatives, but if dialogue fails, we must welcome Libyans who will either choose or be forced to live in Tunisia.
The government announced that regional authorities are prepared to all scenarios, including the influx of Libyan citizens towards Tunisia. In 2011, Tunisia welcomed more than 1.5 million Libyans who fled the war in their country. Tens of thousands of Libyans are now residing in the cities of Sfax, Sousse, Tataouine, Ben Guerden and Tunis. The customs services assert that the flow of Libyans is normal for the moment. However, it could increase in the next few days.
A local official in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo's troubled region of Benin says 18 persons have been killed there on Monday in a fresh attack by a notorious armed group. Benin Administrator Dinas Kibwana said the Allied Forces militia had hacked to death the 18 civilians in the town of Penitenisan, 16 kilometers west of Wuja, a chief administrative town in the Benin region. Civil society groups are reporting that since the end of October, when the army launched an offensive against the militia, ADF fighters have killed more than 200 persons. Civil society activist in Benin, Teddy Katalako, said the government was tipped off on Sunday evening that suspicious men were in. They are, but they did not respond appropriately. The ADF began as an Islamic rebellion hostile to Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni. It fell back into eastern DRC in 1995 and appears to have halted raids inside Uganda. It was in the 1950s when German automaker Volkswagen began selling its iconic car, the Beetle, in Africa. By the 1970s, a significant number of cars owned on the continent were Beetles. A few decades later, the last of the old-fashioned Beetles rolled off the assembly line and were replaced by newer models. But that hasn't stopped Beetlemania from booming, especially in Kenya, where some enthusiasts are keeping discontinued Volkswagen Beetle alive through restoration.
Come to Ryan Auto Restorations. I want to introduce you to some of the projects I have here. These are 1957 oval window.
It may be small, but the Volkswagen is gaining popularity in Kenya. The key about the VW Beetle is lightweight construction. All these reduces the car's weight, and it's one of the most recognizable cars ever made. Richard Kisulani, who owns a 1976 Beetle, is one among many Kenyans in love with the Mini. Chasing Minis and remodeling them has become his full-time job. He says getting an old Beetle back on the road could cost as much as $35,000 depending on the condition of the car.
For you to get a head turner, a good-looking car, you should be ready to spend on such a car. Though it's very expensive to restore a car than to buy a new car. I love this car so much because it's stable on the road, it's simple, easy to maintain, it doesn't require a lot of experience to do it.
Kisulani's VW Beetle 1976 model is powered by a 1200 high combustion engine which produces 40 horsepower. The 1976 model can go from 0 to 100 seconds in a minute to reach a top speed of 160 kilometers per hour. But these figures alone hardly explains how the VW Beetle became a 21st century car of legend.
When you ask them, majority of them will tell you, we used to have this car back in the days, my dad, my granddad. So they developed the interest in restoring the cars because of the history they had back when they were young.
In the busy city of Nairobi, this agile little car can maneuver through the smallest of spaces. This year, Volkswagen officially produced its last Beetle. But in Kenya, the story is far from over, as the Beetle is just reawakening.
When we return, international news. Australia's bushfires push residents towards the sea. And later, sport. Russia appeals against wider ban from major sporting competitions.
Australia's bushfires have been intensifying in the continent's two most populous states, trapping residents of a seaside town in very dangerous conditions. Many properties have been destroyed and at least 2 fatalities were recorded on Tuesday. In the southeastern town of Malakuta, at least 4,000 residents fled towards the waterside as winds pushed an emergency level wildfire towards their homes. Victoria State Chief Daniel Andrews says there were plans to evacuate those trapped by sea. Australia has requested firefighter assistance from the United States and Canada. Fire worsened in the state of Victoria and New South Wales after oppressive heat mixed with strong winds and lightning strikes on Monday. Former boss of the Nissan Renault Car Alliance, Carlos Ghosn, has fled from Japan to Lebanon. Ghosn was awaiting trial in Japan on charges of financial misconduct. His daring escape appears to have mystified his lawyers and Japanese authorities. 65-year-old Ghosn was released on a record $14 million bail in Tokyo in April. He was placed under close surveillance and ordered to surrender his passport. Ghosn says he would no longer be held hostage by court. A rigged Japanese justice system where guilt is presumed, discrimination is rampant, and basic human rights are denied. End quote. One of Ghosn's Japanese lawyers said they were still holding his Lebanese, French, and Brazilian passports as required by the terms of his bail. Japan's immigration authorities told local media had entered the country by private jet under a different name. Supporters and fighters for an Iraqi Shiite militia have set on fire walls of the United States Embassy compound in Baghdad on Tuesday. They said this was to express their anger over American airstrikes that killed 24 members of an Iranian-backed militia over the weekend. Protesters were seen chanting "Death to America." They were also throwing rocks, shattering surveillance cameras, covering the walls with graffiti, and demanding that the United States withdraw its forces from Iraq. The American airstrikes on Sunday were in response to an Iraqi militia attack, but they have resulted in the most serious political crisis in years for the United States in Iraq, stoking anti-Americanism and handing an advantage to Iran in its competition for influence in the country. The airstrikes targeted an Iranian-backed Iraqi militia, Kataib Hezbollah, which the United States accused of carrying out a missile attack on an Iraqi military base. An American contractor was killed, and American and Iraqi service members were wounded. A spokesman for the militia denied involvement in the attack. The high-speed railway line connecting Beijing and Zhongguancun went into operation on Monday. Zhongguancun is the co-host of the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. A smart train with 5G signals, wireless charging, and intelligence lighting departed from Beijing to Zhongguancun in North China's Hebei province. And reporter Zhen Yinbei rode along in one of the trains.
This is the first high-speed train from Beijing to Chongli in Zhangjiakou, Hebei province. It travels at a speed of up to 350 kilometers per hour. A new line shortens the 174-kilometer trip from over 3 hours to less than 1. So let's have a ride. Outwardly, it looks like the other Fuxing bullet trains, but when we take a closer look, we find differences. It has newly added intelligent modules like the light system. It can adjust automatically based on the environment and how many passengers are on board. Of course, this is high-speed railway line for the upcoming 2022 Winter Olympic Games. So there are areas to store snowboards. That is a very convenient design. And there are places for journalists to file reports on the Olympic Games and the passengers to watch live Olympic broadcasts in the future. And one particular thing the conductor told me is they are using self-driving and Beetle navigation satellite system on this train to deliver passengers to their destinations fast and on time. There are 10 stations on the line, including one at the famous section of Buhari in section the Great Wall, and one at Taizicheng here in Chongli, which is close to the podium of the 2022 Winter Olympics. All these stations are equipped with smart devices, robots, and 5G networks. And the traveling experience on this line is excellent. So I'm planning a trip with my family on this line already.
Still ahead, sports. Russia appeals against WADA ban from major sporting competitions. Please stay with us.
Imo Sports Commission Chairman Fan Nduboke has revealed the state's interest in hosting the 2022 National Sports Festival. Nduboke says this will enable the state to upgrade the existing sports facilities and create new sports centers across the state. The former National Swan president says if given the hosting rights, the state would adopt the COJA 2003 All-African Games model that would cause the state to spend less in staging the festival. Russia has filed an appeal with WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, against the 4-year ban imposed on the country from all major sporting events. The ban means Russia's flag and anthem will not be allowed at events such as the Tokyo 2020 Olympics and Paralympics and FIFA 2022 World Cup in Qatar. The case will now be heard by the Court of Arbitration for Sport.